Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood in the center of the massive chamber, her small human frame dwarfed by the towering alien forms surrounding her. The council chamber of Nexus Prime Station stretched up into darkness, its walls carved from black stone that seemed to absorb light. 7 species sat in judgment above her, each representing millions of years of galactic dominance. The Chronari spoke first, their crystalline voice echoing through translation devices. "Human representative, you will listen to our final decision." Elena kept her face calm, though her heart pounded. She had served as Earth's ambassador for 12 years, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The aliens had called this meeting without warning, summoning her from the human embassy with only an hour's notice. High above, the Vorthak delegate leaned forward. Its 6 arms moved in complex patterns as it spoke. "Your species has grown too quickly, too boldly. You terraform worlds without permission. You build colonies faster than we can monitor. This cannot continue." The Zephyrian representative, a being of pure energy contained within a metal shell, added its voice. "In 50 standard years, humans have claimed 300 star systems. Other species took millennia to achieve such expansion. You upset the natural order." Elena wanted to argue, to defend humanity's achievements, but she knew better. This was not a trial. It was a sentencing. The Dominion had ruled the galaxy for over 50,000 years. When humans first developed faster than light travel, they had been welcomed with open arms. The aliens presented themselves as wise guardians of galactic peace. They offered humanity membership in their great civilization. But Elena had learned the truth over her years of service. The Dominion did not guide younger species toward greatness. They controlled them. They limited them. They made sure no species could ever threaten their power. The ethereal council member, a floating mass of tentacles and eyes, spoke in whispers that filled the chamber. "Humanity must be brought under proper control. We offer you a choice." Elena's hands clenched behind her back. She knew what was coming. The Chronari continued. "You will surrender 60% of your colonies to Dominion oversight. Your remaining worlds will accept our population controllers. All human children will undergo genetic modification to reduce aggressive tendencies. Your military will be disbanded except for local security forces. You will accept permanent junior status within the Dominion." The chamber fell silent. Elena felt the weight of 7 ancient species watching her, waiting for her response. She thought of Earth, of the colonies where humans had built new lives among the stars. She thought of children playing under alien suns, of farmers growing crops in soil their grandparents had never seen. "And if we refuse?" Elena asked, though she already knew the answer. The Vorthak's arms moved faster, a sign of agitation. "Then humanity will be removed from the galaxy completely. Your species will be classified as a galactic threat and eliminated." Elena nodded slowly. She had expected this. For months, human intelligence had reported Dominion fleets moving closer to human space. Trade agreements had been cancelled. Diplomatic meetings had grown hostile. The signs had been clear. "How long do we have to decide?" she asked. 72 standard hours, the Chronari replied. "After that, our fleets will move to enforce compliance." Elena looked up at the 7 species that controlled the galaxy. Each one had likely faced this same choice millennia ago. Each had chosen survival over freedom. That was how the Dominion maintained control, not through strength alone, but through fear. "I understand," Elena said simply. "I will relay your terms to my government." The ethereal floated closer to the chamber floor. "You are wise, human. Survival is better than extinction. Other species have learned this lesson. They prosper under our guidance," Elena almost laughed. She had visited those prosperous species. The Altarians, once great explorers, now lived only on their homeworld under strict population controls. The Nexari, former warriors, had been genetically modified into peaceful farmers. The Calvorians had been brilliant scientists until the Dominion decided their research was too dangerous. All of them survived. None of them truly lived. "The session is concluded," the Chronari announced. "You may return to your embassy to contact your leaders." Elena bowed formally to each of the 7 species as protocol demanded. Then she turned and walked toward the chamber exit. Her footsteps echoed in the vast space, a lonely sound that seemed to emphasize humanity's isolation. The walk back to the human embassy took 20 minutes through the station's corridors. Elena passed representatives from dozens of species, all going about their daily business under Dominion rule. Some nodded respectfully to her, Others avoided eye contact. All of them looked broken in some way, Elena thought. Defeated. The human embassy was small compared to the grand buildings of older species. Elena's staff of 12 looked up hopefully as she entered. They had been waiting anxiously for news. Pack everything important, Elena told them quietly. We're leaving within the hour. Her aide, David Chen, stepped forward. Ambassador, what did they say? Elena looked at her staff. Good people who had dedicated their lives to diplomatic service. Some had families on the station. All of them would lose everything they had built here. They gave us 72 hours to surrender most of our colonies and accept genetic modification of our children, Elena said simply. Or face extinction. The room fell silent. Then David asked the question Elena had been expecting. What will Earth decide? Elena smiled for the first time in hours. Earth will never accept those terms. None of our colonies will. We'd rather die free than live as slaves. She walked to her private office and activated the quantum communicator hidden behind a false panel. The device was illegal under Dominion law. They controlled all official communications between species. But humanity had never been good at following rules they disagreed with. The communicator connected to a relay station in human space, then bounced the signal through 7 more hidden stations before reaching Earth. The message would take less than an hour to arrive. But Elena knew the response had already been decided years ago. She spoke clearly into the device. Winter is coming. Repeat, winter is coming. Timeline 72 hours. Then she destroyed the communicator. Elena turned to her staff who were already packing files and personal items. Gather everything we can't afford to lose. Cultural items, research data, personal effects. Leave the furniture and decorations. As her people worked, Elena walked to the window of her office. Outside, she could see the vast structure of Nexus Prime Station stretching in all directions. Millions of beings lived and worked here, representatives of the Dominion's greatest achievement, a galactic civilization that had lasted 50,000 years. But Elena had learned something the Dominion had forgotten. Civilizations built on fear and control carried the seeds of their own destruction. They could last for millennia, but they could not last forever. Humanity had been preparing for this day since their first contact with the Dominion. Not openly, not obviously, but carefully and quietly, what the aliens saw as human aggression and rapid expansion had actually been humanity's insurance policy. Elena watched a Dominion patrol ship drift past the station. In 72 hours, that ship and thousands like it would head toward human space. They would find empty worlds and silent cities, but they would not find humanity. President Chen Wei stared at the holographic display floating above the conference table. The quantum communication from Ambassador Vasquez had arrived 3 hours ago, and already the emergency session had stretched deep into the night. Around the table, both physically and through quantum link, sat the most powerful people in human space. Winter is coming, Chen repeated the coded phrase. 72 hours until the Dominion fleets move against us. Governor Sarah Martinez of the Centauri colonies leaned forward. 60% of our worlds, genetic modification of our children, and permanent second-class status. They might as well ask us to stop being human. Admiral Marcus Torres, attending via secure link from the classified military station Forge Prime, nodded grimly. Our intelligence was correct. The Dominion has been planning this for months. Fleet movement suggests they have 15,000 ships positioned around human space. 15,000, whispered Dr. James Wright from the Luna Research Station. We have what, 300 combat vessels? 312, Admiral Torres corrected, plus support ships and civilian vessels. Against 15,000 Dominion warships, each one larger and more advanced than anything we have. The room fell quiet. Everyone understood the mathematics of the situation. In a direct military confrontation, humanity would be destroyed within days. Chen looked around the table at the faces of the people who had helped build humanity's interstellar civilization. Options? Governor Martinez spoke first. We negotiate. Ask for better terms. Maybe give up 30% of our colonies instead of 60. Delay the genetic modification program. No, came a voice from the wall display. Governor Tom Bradley from New Australia shook his head. I've read the files. Every species that negotiated got worse terms, not better. The Dominion doesn't bargain. They dictate. Dr. Wright cleared his throat nervously. What about surrender? Complete surrender. At least our species survives. The silence that followed was heavy with disapproval. Chen himself felt a flash of anger, but he understood the doctor's fear. They all felt it. Survival without freedom isn't really survival, said Governor Anna Petrov from New Moscow. Look at the other species under Dominion control. The Altarians haven't left their homeworld in 1,000 years. The Nexari have been genetically modified so much they're not even the same species anymore. Admiral Torres's voice cut through the discussion. There is another option. We've been preparing for this possibility for 20 years. All eyes turned to his image on the display. Torres was one of the few people who knew about humanity's deepest secrets, the projects that had been hidden from the Dominion since first contact. Operation Exodus, Torres continued. Complete evacuation of human space. All colonies, all populations, all critical infrastructure. We disappear, Chen nodded. He had hoped they would never need to activate Exodus, but the plans had been in place since he took office. Disappear where? Asked Dr. Wright. The Dominion controls the entire galaxy. Torres smiled for the first time in the meeting. Not the entire galaxy, and certainly not beyond it. While the politicians debated humanity's fate on Earth, Dr. Sarah Okafor worked frantically in her laboratory on New Kilimanjaro. The frontier world sat on the edge of human space, far from major trade routes. Most people thought it was a simple agricultural colony. They were wrong. Hidden beneath New Kilimanjaro's surface lay humanity's most advanced research facility. Dr. Okafor had spent 15 years there, working on projects the Dominion had specifically forbidden, faster-than-light technology beyond their approved designs, weapons research, and most importantly, navigation systems that didn't rely on Dominion star charts. Sarah, the quantum message came through. Her assistant, Dr. Kim Patel, called from across the lab. Operation Exodus is active. Sarah nodded without looking up from her work. The Void Jump Drive prototype hummed quietly on the test bench in front of her. For months, she had been running simulations, checking calculations, preparing for this moment. Traditional faster-than-light travel used hyperspace lanes, paths through a parallel dimension that connected star systems. The Dominion had mapped and monitored every hyperspace lane in the galaxy. They controlled who could travel where, but Sarah's Void Jump Drive worked differently. Instead of using hyperspace, it punched through the barriers between dimensions entirely. It could go anywhere, even to places that had no hyperspace connections, places like the void between galaxies. Are the calculations ready? Sarah asked. Kim nodded. Navigation data for 2 million ships, complete with fuel requirements and supply schedules. The quantum computers have been running the numbers for 6 months. Sarah finally looked up from her work. 2 million ships? That's how many we'll need to evacuate everyone, Kim explained. 300 billion humans across 300 star systems. Everyone from Earth to the farthest frontier colonies. The number was staggering. Sarah had known the evacuation would be massive, but seeing it calculated precisely made her hands shake slightly. On Forge Prime, Admiral Torres reviewed reports flooding in from across human space. The station itself was hidden inside a modified asteroid, invisible to Dominion sensors. Similar facilities existed throughout human territory: secret shipyards, supply depots, and communication hubs. Status report from Sector 7. His aide Lieutenant Commander Janet Ross announced, "The hidden fleet at Titan Station is ready to move. 800 ships fully fueled and supplied." Torres nodded. For 20 years, humanity had been building ships in secret. Not warships. Those would be useless against the Dominion's superior technology. Instead, they had built transport vessels, cargo haulers, and long-range exploration ships. Vessels designed for one purpose: getting humanity as far away from the Dominion as possible. What about the civilian evacuation? Torres asked. Refugee protocols activated on all colonies. The cover story is holding so far. Most civilians think it's just an emergency drill. Torres felt a pang of guilt about that deception. Across human space, families were being told to pack essential belongings for a routine evacuation exercise. They had no idea they would never see their homes again. But operational security was essential. If the Dominion learned about Exodus too early, they could stop it before it began. Back on Earth, President Chen made his decision. The debate had continued for hours, but in his heart, he had known the answer from the moment he received Ambassador Vasquez's message. "We reject the Dominion's terms," Chen announced to the emergency session. "Operation Exodus is now active. All department heads implement your protocols immediately. Governor Martinez looked shocked. Mr. President, are you certain? This is our entire civilization we're talking about. Yes, it is, Chen replied. And I won't hand our civilization over to aliens who want to turn our children into obedient servants. Humanity chose to reach for the stars 50 years ago. Today we choose to reach even further. The next few minutes were a blur of activity as each department head began implementing plans that had been prepared for decades. Military commanders activated hidden fleets. Colonial governors began emergency drills that would become permanent evacuations. Scientists started downloading critical research data for transport. Dr. Wright looked pale as he watched the activity around him. Mr. President, what if we're wrong? What if the Dominion would have honored their promises? Chen turned to the scientist with a sad smile. Dr. Wright, in all of recorded history, has any empire ever honored promises made to a conquered people? As the meeting ended and officials rushed to their duties, Chen remained alone in the conference room. Outside the windows of the presidential palace, Geneva looked peaceful under the evening lights. In 48 hours, those lights would go dark forever. Chen activated his personal communicator and sent a message that would be repeated across 300 star systems. Citizens of humanity's interstellar republic, this is your president. By now, you have received evacuation orders from your local authorities. These are not drills. In 48 hours, we begin a journey that will take us further from home than any human has ever traveled. We go not in defeat, but in defiance. We go not as refugees, but as pioneers. The stars that gave us birth are no longer safe for us. So we shall find new stars and make them our own. Maria Santos stood in the doorway of her farmhouse on New Valencia, looking out at the fields her family had tended for 30 years. The corn was almost ready for harvest, tall green stalks swaying in the morning breeze. Her grandfather's olive trees lined the eastern border of the property, their branches heavy with fruit. "Mama, the transport is coming," her daughter Lisa called from inside the house. At 15, Lisa had never known any world but New Valencia. This dusty farming colony was her entire universe. Maria turned away from the fields and walked back into the house. The furniture remained. The dining table where 3 generations of her family had shared meals, the rocking chair where she had nursed her children, the bookshelf filled with physical books brought from Earth decades ago. They could only take what fit in 2 storage containers per family. Everything else would be left behind. "Did you pack your grandmother's jewelry?" Maria asked. Lisa nodded, holding up a small wooden box. "And the photo albums. And Papa's guitar." Maria's husband Carlos emerged from their bedroom carrying their 2 containers. At 55, he had spent most of his adult life building their farm. Now he looked older than his years, his face lined with grief. "The transport captain says we have 10 minutes, Carlos said quietly. Outside, they could hear the sound of other families loading their belongings. The evacuation of New Valencia had been organized with military precision. Every family knew their departure time, their transport assignment, and their destination coordinates. What they didn't know was where they were really going. Maria took one last look around the house. The walls held pictures of family gatherings, school graduations, harvest celebrations, 30 years of life frozen in frames that would soon be covered with dust. "Come on," she said to her family. "It's time." 10,000 kilometers above New Valencia, Captain Jennifer Park watched the evacuation proceed from the bridge of the transport vessel New Horizons. Her ship was one of hundreds in orbit around the colony, each one loading families and their possessions. "Status report," Captain Park ordered. 17,000 families loaded so far, her first officer reported. "We're ahead of schedule. The farming equipment and livestock are being loaded on the cargo vessels." Captain Park nodded. The evacuation of New Valencia was being repeated on every human colony simultaneously. 300 worlds, each one saying goodbye to everything they had built over 50 years of expansion. "Any word from the perimeter scouts?" she asked. "All clear so far. No sign of Dominion forces, that was the critical factor. If the Dominion discovered the evacuation too early, they could prevent it. Their fleets could blockade the major colonies, trap millions of civilians. The success of Operation Exodus depended on speed and secrecy. On the bridge display, Captain Park watched the surface of New Valencia grow smaller as her ship began to climb toward the jump point. Below, she could see the lights of farms and towns that would soon be empty. In a few hours, New Valencia would be a ghost world. But the people who had built those farms and towns would be free. On Earth, the evacuation proceeded differently. As humanity's homeworld, Earth held 15 billion people. Moving that many humans required logistics on an unprecedented scale. Transportation Minister David Kim stood in the control center beneath the Sahara Desert, watching displays that showed the movement of people across every continent. Massive transport ships landed at designated points around the globe, loading civilians by the millions. "How are we doing on the artifact preservation?" Minister Kim asked. His aide consulted her tablet. "The Louvre is completely loaded. The British Museum finished 2 hours ago. We got all the major pieces from the Metropolitan Museum. The Vatican archives are secure." Preserving human culture and history had been identified as critical to the success of Exodus. If humanity was going to start over somewhere else, they needed to bring their past with them. What about the seed banks? Svalbard Global Seed Vault is being transferred in its entirety. Agricultural stations from every continent are contributing samples. We'll have genetic material for every crop and livestock species humanity has ever cultivated. Minister Kim felt a moment of pride. When Operation Exodus had been designed, the planners had thought of everything. They weren't just evacuating people, they were preserving civilization itself. In the deep oceans, automated systems were already beginning the final phase of Earth's preparation. Once the evacuation was complete, the planet would be left exactly as the Dominion expected. To find it, apparently abandoned but with no signs of where the population had gone, Dr. Sarah Okafor's laboratory on New Kilimanjaro buzzed with activity as her team prepared the navigation data for 2 million ships. The void jump drive technology that had taken 15 years to develop would now be tested on the largest scale imaginable. "Final calculations are complete," Dr. Kim Patel announced. "Jump coordinates have been distributed to all fleet commanders." Sarah looked at the star charts displayed on the wall screens. Traditional maps showed the Milky Way galaxy and its neighboring galaxies: Andromeda, the large Magellanic Cloud, the small Magellanic Cloud. The spaces between galaxies appeared empty on these charts, but Sarah's new maps showed something different. The void between galaxies wasn't empty. It contained ancient structures, debris fields, and most importantly, resources that could support human civilization. "The target zone is confirmed," Sarah asked. "Confirmed. 3.7 million light-years from Earth. In the void between Milky Way and Andromeda, long-range probes detected suitable star systems and planetary bodies." Sarah nodded. The destination for Operation Exodus wasn't another part of the Milky Way. It was another galaxy entirely. Andromeda, humanity's new home. Admiral Torres coordinated the military aspects of Exodus from his command center on Forge Prime. Around him, officers managed communications with fleet elements scattered across 300 star systems. "Status report from Alpha Fleet," one of his staff announced. "All civilian evacuations in Sector 1 are complete. Military vessels are assuming convoy escort positions. Beta Fleet reports ready for jump operations," added another officer. "Gamma Fleet is still loading but should be ready within the hour." Torres studied the tactical display showing the positions of over 2 million human vessels. The largest space fleet in galactic history was preparing to disappear completely. "Any word from our intelligence assets in Dominion space?" Torres asked. "Ambassador Vasquez reports the Dominion Council is still debating their response to our rejection of their terms. They don't appear to suspect we're evacuating." That was crucial. The Dominion expected humans to either accept their terms or prepare to fight. The idea that an entire species would simply leave the galaxy had never occurred to them. "Sir," another officer called out urgently. "Long-range sensors are detecting Dominion fleet movements. 15 battle groups moving toward the outer colonies." Torres checked his chronometer. They still had 18 hours left in the 72-hour deadline. The Dominion was moving early. "Signal all fleets," Torres ordered. "Accelerate evacuation schedules. We need to be gone before those battle groups reach our space." Across human space, the pace of evacuation quickened. Transport ships that had been loading carefully now moved with desperate efficiency. Families that had planned to take time saying goodbye to their homes were rushed aboard vessels within minutes. On New Terra, 8-year-old Jamie Chen watched through the viewport of a transport ship as his home colony fell away beneath them. The city where he had been born, the school where he had learned to read, the park where he had played with his friends, all becoming smaller and smaller until they were just lights against the darkness of space. "Where are we going?" Jamie asked his mother. She held him close, not sure how to explain. We're going to find a new home, sweetie. A place where we can be safe. Will we come back? His mother was quiet for a long moment. No, Jamie. We won't be coming back. But as the transport ship reached orbit and joined the massive convoy forming around New Terra, Jamie's mother looked at the thousands of ships carrying millions of human beings toward an uncertain future. And she felt something she hadn't expected. Hope. Hours passed. One by one, the colonies that had been humanity's home for 50 years went dark. The last transport ships lifted off from New Valencia, carrying Maria Santos and her family toward a future they couldn't imagine. The final cargo haulers departed Earth, their holds filled with the accumulated knowledge and culture of human civilization. Dr. Sarah Okafor stood on the bridge of the research vessel Breakthrough, watching as the last of the hidden facilities on New Kilimanjaro completed their evacuation. Soon her ship would make the first void jump, leading 2 million vessels into the space between galaxies. All fleets report ready for jump operations, her navigation officer announced. Sarah looked at the tactical display one last time. 2 million ships, 300 billion human beings. Everything their species had built among the stars, now concentrated into a fleet that filled local space from horizon to horizon. Signal all vessels, Sarah ordered. This is Dr. Okafor aboard Breakthrough. Today we leave the only home our species has ever known. We go into the void not as exiles, but as pioneers. We carry with us everything that makes us human. Our memories, our dreams, our refusal to surrender our freedom. Wherever we make our new home, we will still be who we choose to be. She paused, thinking of all the families aboard the ships around her. Children who would grow up under alien stars. Parents who had given up everything for their children's freedom. Elderly humans who might not live to see their new home but had chosen to make the journey anyway. All ships prepare for void jump on my mark. Jump in 3, 2, 1 and mark. 2 million ships vanished from normal space in perfect synchronization, leaving behind empty star systems and the echo of humanity's greatest leap into the unknown. The void between galaxies was nothing like the space humans had known before. Captain Jennifer Park stared through the viewport of New Horizons at absolute darkness, broken only by the distant glow of the Milky Way, now millions of light years behind them. No stars provided navigation points. No planets offered refuge. Nothing existed here except the vast fleet of human ships and the ancient mysteries they had come to discover. Navigation report, Captain Park ordered, trying to keep the uncertainty out of her voice. We're holding position in Formation Grid 77 Alpha, her navigator replied. Dr. Okafor's research vessels are still mapping the void jump exit points. Some ships arrived off course. That was the problem with void jumping. Unlike hyperspace travel, which followed established routes, jumping through dimensional barriers was unpredictable. Most of the human fleet had arrived together, but thousands of ships had scattered across several light years of empty space. Casualties? Captain Park asked. Her first officer checked his reports. 17 ships lost during the jump sequence. 43 more are reporting critical system failures. The engineering corps is deploying rescue vessels. Captain Park nodded grimly. 17 ships lost meant nearly 1 million human lives gone in an instant. The price of freedom was higher than anyone had wanted to pay. On the bridge of the research vessel Breakthrough, Dr. Sarah Okafor studied sensor readings from the void around them. When she had designed the void jump drive, she had based her calculations on long-range telescope observations and theoretical models. Now, for the first time, humans were seeing the space between galaxies up close. There's something here, announced Dr. Kim Patel from the sensor station, approximately 2 light years ahead. The scanners are picking up artificial structures. Sarah felt her heart skip. The decision to bring humanity into the void had been based partly on evidence that this region of space wasn't entirely empty. Ancient radio signals, gravitational anomalies, traces of long-dead civilizations. Take us closer, Sarah ordered. Signal the fleet to maintain safe distance until we know what we're dealing with. As Breakthrough moved through the darkness, its sensors began painting a picture that made Sarah's breath catch. Ahead of them, scattered across hundreds of cubic light years, were the remains of a civilization that defied imagination. Massive structures drifted in the void, cities the size of planets, ring-shaped habitats that could have held billions of inhabitants, geometric forms that served purposes Sarah couldn't begin to guess. All of them dark, all of them ancient beyond measure. How old? Sarah asked her science team. Dr. Patel ran calculations on his instruments. Preliminary dating suggests these structures are at least 2 million years old. Possibly much older. 2 million years. That meant this civilization had existed long before the Dominion rose to power in the Milky Way. Long before most of the current galactic species had evolved intelligence. Are there any power sources? Any signs of life? Negative. Everything appears to be deactivated or destroyed. But Sarah, Dr. Patel's voice carried excitement. The technology readings are incredible. Some of these materials don't match anything in our database. The engineering principles are completely unknown. Meanwhile, in the Milky Way galaxy that humanity had left behind, chaos was spreading through Dominion space. High Counselor Zethkar of the Chronari stood in the emergency session chamber, his crystalline form vibrating with frequencies that indicated extreme distress. "Explain to me," Zethkar demanded of the military commander before him, "how an entire species vanishes without a trace." Fleet Admiral Vortex of the Dominion Navy shifted uncomfortably. His 6 arms moved in patterns of confusion and frustration. "Our advanced fleets reached human space exactly on schedule. Every colony world was abandoned. Every space station was empty. There were no signs of battle, no indication of where they went. 300 billion beings," whispered High Counselor Morden of the Ethereal Collective. "They simply are left." "Our analysts are studying the abandoned facilities," Admiral Vortex continued. "The humans appear to have taken everything of value. Art, cultural artifacts, industrial equipment, even agricultural samples. The evacuation was planned and methodical. Zethkar's crystalline body flashed angry colors. The Dominion had ruled the galaxy for 50,000 years by maintaining absolute control over all species within it. The idea that a junior member species could simply choose to leave was unprecedented. "Find them," Zethkar ordered. "Search every star system. Check every hyperspace route. They cannot have gone far with such a large population." But even as he gave the order, Zethkar felt a cold certainty that the humans would not be found. In his 20,000 years of life, he had never encountered a species quite like humanity. Other races had submitted when faced with Dominion power. The humans had done something else entirely. They had escaped. Back in the void, the human fleet was beginning the complex process of establishing their first foothold in intergalactic space. Engineering vessels moved between the ancient structures, setting up temporary habitats and research stations. The mysteries they were uncovering grew more incredible by the hour. Dr. Sarah Okafor floated in zero gravity through what had once been a vast library or data storage facility. The walls were covered with symbols and patterns that seemed to shift when viewed directly. Her translation computers were working frantically to decode the alien writing systems. "Any progress?" asked Dr. Chen Wei, the fleet's chief archaeologist who was examining similar symbols on the far wall. "Some," Sarah replied. "The computer recognizes mathematical principles in about 30% of the text. Physics equations, stellar coordinates, that sort of thing. But there are sections that don't seem to follow any logical pattern we can understand." Dr. Chen ran his scanner over a section of wall. This civilization was incredibly advanced. The material science alone is centuries ahead of anything we've achieved. These walls have been exposed to cosmic radiation for millions of years, but they show no signs of degradation. Sarah nodded, then stopped as her translation computer chimed with a success tone. "Got something," she announced. Partial translation of this section. The text appeared on her display screen in English. "The Dominion fleets arrived without warning. Our colonies fell one by one to their advance. We, the architects of the First Alliance, choose exile over slavery. Let our work stand as testament to our refusal to bow." Sarah stared at the translation in shock. "Dr. Chen, I think we found what happened to the galaxy's previous rulers." As news of the discovery spread through the fleet, Admiral Torres convened an emergency command meeting aboard his flagship Defiance. The implications were staggering. "So the Dominion didn't just rise to power," Torres said, reviewing the translated documents. "They overthrew and exterminated the previous galactic civilization." Dr. Okafor appeared on the meeting's holographic display from her research station. "That's exactly what happened. The species called themselves the First Alliance. They ruled the galaxy for over 1,000,000 years before the Dominion came to power. When faced with conquest, they chose to flee into the void rather than submit. Just like us," observed Captain Maria Santos, who had been appointed as civilian fleet coordinator. "Yes, But they had advantages we don't, Sarah continued. Their technology was far more advanced. They had time to plan their exodus over thousands of years, and they left behind detailed records of Dominion tactics and weaknesses. Admiral Torres leaned forward in his chair. What kind of records? Everything. Military strategies, political structures, even genetic information about Dominion species. The First Alliance studied their enemies very thoroughly before they left. The meeting fell silent as the participants absorbed this information. They had fled the Milky Way to escape the Dominion's power. Now they had discovered that they weren't the first species to make that choice. There's something else, Sarah added. The First Alliance didn't just flee. They left behind weapons, hidden installations throughout the galaxy designed to activate if the Dominion's rule was ever challenged by another species. Torres felt a chill run down his spine. Are you saying they expected someone else to eventually rebel against the Dominion? I'm saying they planned for it. Every piece of technology we're finding here, every data archive, every weapon system, it's all designed to give a future rebel species the tools to overthrow Dominion rule. The implications were enormous. Humanity hadn't just escaped the Dominion. They had potentially found the means to destroy it. But first they had to survive in the void. The next few weeks tested human endurance and ingenuity like nothing in their history. Ships ran low on supplies. Life support systems strained under the demands of supporting 300 billion people in an environment that could kill them instantly if their technology failed. 8-year-old Jamie Chen, aboard the transport New Beijing with his family, watched through the viewports as engineering teams worked around the clock to convert ancient alien structures into human habitats. The boy who had never known any world but knew Terra was now living in the void between galaxies, surrounded by mysteries that even the adults couldn't understand. Will we ever have a real planet to live on again? Jamie asked his mother. She looked out at the vast construction projects taking shape around them. Human habitats built inside alien ruins, farms growing in asteroid soil, children playing in artificial gravity fields powered by technology they were only beginning to understand. Yes, sweetie, she said. But first we have to build something that's never existed before. A civilization that belongs to no world and every world at the same time. As the human fleet worked to establish their new home in the void, reports began filtering back from automated probes they had left behind in the Milky Way. The Dominion was in chaos. Other species had observed humanity's successful escape, and some were beginning to ask uncomfortable questions about Dominion rule. The Zephyrian Confederacy had withdrawn their fleets from joint Dominion operations. The crystalline communes were demanding explanations for humanity's allegations about Dominion history. Even species that had been loyal to the Dominion for millennia were starting to wonder if they, too, were living as slaves rather than partners. Dr. Sarah Okafor stood in the observation deck of Breakthrough, looking out at the growing network of human settlements scattered among the ancient ruins. In just a few weeks, they had built the foundation of something unprecedented, a civilization that existed entirely in the space between stars. Status report, she asked her aide. Population health is stabilizing. Food production is meeting demand thanks to the hydroponic farms we've established in the larger structures. The children are adapting better than expected. Sarah nodded. Children always adapted. It was one of humanity's greatest strengths. What about the research programs? We've decoded about 15% of the First Alliance archives. The technology applications are incredible. New propulsion systems, energy sources, even what appears to be instructions for creating artificial planets. Sarah smiled. Humanity had left the Milky Way as refugees, but they were learning to become something else entirely. The First Alliance had given them a gift beyond price, not just the technology to survive in the void, but the knowledge to eventually return to the galaxy as liberators rather than supplicants. 1 year after the Great Exodus, the void between galaxies hummed with life and activity that would have seemed impossible to the refugees who had first arrived in the darkness. Dr. Sarah Okafor stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, humanity's first major settlement in intergalactic space, watching construction crews put the finishing touches on the residential sectors that would house another 1 million colonists. The station itself was a marvel of human engineering, enhanced by First Alliance technology. Built inside the hollow shell of an ancient alien city structure, New Geneva combined human architecture with materials and power sources that had existed for millions of years. Gardens grew in artificial gravity fields. Children played in parks where earth trees grew alongside alien vegetation, found preserved in the ruins. Population report, Sarah requested from her aide, Dr. Kim Patel, who had become her deputy director of the Intergalactic Research Institute. We now have stable settlements supporting 50 million humans across 12 major sites, Kim reported. The agricultural stations are producing surplus food for the first time since Exodus. Birth rates have actually increased above pre-Exodus levels. Sarah smiled. Humans had always thrived when faced with new frontiers. The challenge of building civilization in the void had brought out the best in her species. What about the children who were born here? That's the most interesting development, Kim said, pulling up holographic displays. The children born in the void are already showing adaptations we didn't expect. Better spatial awareness, enhanced ability to work in zero gravity, even some resistance to cosmic radiation. Evolution in real time, Sarah nodded. Humanity was already becoming something new, shaped by their unique environment. The children playing in the parks below would never know the fear of Dominion rule. They would grow up free, among the stars their parents had claimed for them. 26-year-old Jamie Chen, no longer the 8-year-old boy who had watched his homeworld disappear, floated through the zero-gravity workshop, where he designed new habitat modules for the growing human settlements. Around him, holographic blueprints showed plans for structures that would have been impossible to build in the gravity well of a planet. The new residential complex will house 10,000 families, Jamie explained to his team. We're using the enhanced materials from Site 7, so it should be self-sustaining for at least a century. His design incorporated lessons learned from a year of living in the void. The children who had been evacuated from human colonies had become the engineers and architects of humanity's new civilization. They understood this environment in ways their parents never could. Jamie's personal communicator chimed with an incoming message. The sender ID made him pause. It was from his childhood friend Lisa Santos, now working as a diplomatic officer. Jamie, you need to see this, Lisa's message said. We just received a transmission from the Milky Way. The Dominion is falling apart. Meanwhile, in the Milky Way galaxy that humanity had left behind, High Counselor Zethkar of the Chronari faced the greatest crisis in Dominion history. The council chamber that had once symbolized absolute galactic authority now felt more like a courtroom where the Dominion itself was on trial. Report on the Zephyrian situation. Zethkar demanded of his military commander, Fleet Admiral. Vorthex's 6 arms moved in patterns of defeat. The Zephyrian Confederacy has formally withdrawn from all joint operations. They're demanding access to the historical archives that the humans claim to have discovered. And the crystalline communes? They've stopped contributing resources to our fleet operations. They're saying they want to reassess their relationship with the Dominion. Zethkar's crystalline form flashed angry red. In the year since humanity's disappearance, the careful balance of fear and dependency that had held the Dominion together for millennia was collapsing. What about the other species? The Altarians have begun expanding beyond their homeworld for the first time in 1,000 years. The Nixari are refusing genetic modification renewals for their population. Even the Kelvorians have restarted their banned research programs. The truth was spreading through the galaxy like a virus. The humans had left behind more than empty colonies. They had left behind questions. Questions about Dominion history. Questions about the rights of member species. Questions about what freedom might look like. Sir, Admiral Vorthex continued carefully, our intelligence services have intercepted transmissions suggesting that some species are attempting to contact the humans directly. Zethkar went completely still. The idea that member species might be trying to communicate with the escaped humans was terrifying. If humanity shared their discoveries about the First Alliance, if they offered other species an alternative to Dominion rule, find them, Zethkar ordered. Whatever resources it takes. Find the humans and destroy them before they can spread their poison any further. But even as he gave the order, Zethkar knew it was probably too late. Back in the void, Ambassador Elena Vasquez reviewed the intelligence reports flowing in from across the Milky Way, the small woman who had once stood alone before the Dominion. Council now served as humanity's first intergalactic ambassador, coordinating communications with the growing resistance movement in their former home. The Zephyrian Confederacy is requesting formal diplomatic relations, her aide reported. They want to establish an embassy here in the void. Approved, Elena replied without hesitation. What about the others? The crystalline communes have sent a delegation. The Altarian Republic wants to negotiate a mutual defense pact. Even some of the newer species are reaching out. Elena looked at the star charts showing the current state of the Milky Way. Red zones indicated areas still under full Dominion control. Yellow zones showed systems where Dominion authority was being challenged. Green zones marked regions where local species had declared independence. Nearly half the galaxy was now green or yellow. "Ma'am," her aide continued, "there's something else. Our long-range sensors have detected Dominion fleet movements toward the galactic rim. They appear to be searching for us," Elena smiled. "Let them search. By the time they figure out how to reach us, we'll be ready for them." The transformation of humanity's technological capabilities had been extraordinary. Working with First Alliance archives, human scientists had developed new forms of faster-than-light travel, energy generation, and manufacturing that surpassed anything the Dominion possessed. Dr. Sarah Okafor demonstrated the latest breakthrough to a gathering of human leaders and alien diplomats in the main laboratory of New Geneva Station. On the testing platform in front of her sat a device no larger than a briefcase. "Planetary Genesis technology," Sarah announced. The First Alliance left detailed instructions for creating artificial worlds from raw materials. Asteroids, gas clouds, even cosmic dust can be converted into fully habitable planets in a matter of months. The implications were staggering. Humanity no longer needed to find suitable worlds to colonize. They could create their own anywhere they chose. "How many worlds could we create?" asked President Chen Wei, who had been re-elected to lead humanity's government in exile. "As many as we want," Sarah replied. "The technology is self-replicating and requires only basic raw materials. We could create 1,000 worlds in the Andromeda Galaxy alone." Admiral Torres, now commanding humanity's rapidly expanding fleet, leaned forward. "What about defensive applications?" "The same technology that creates planets can create fortress worlds. Artificial planets with shields, weapons, and manufacturing capabilities. If the Dominion ever finds us, they'll face defenses they can't imagine." As the meeting continued, 8-year-old Emily Martinez played in the station's central garden with her friends. Born in the void, she had never known planetary gravity or natural sunlight. To her, the artificial environments of the human settlements were normal. The ancient alien ruins were just part of the landscape. "My dad says we're going to build a new planet next year," Emily told her friend Carlos Santos Jr., grandson of the farmers who had fled New Valencia. "A whole planet?" Carlos asked. "Just for us?" "Not just one, hundreds. My mom says we'll spread across the whole galaxy." The children continued playing, unaware that their casual conversation described the future of human civilization. To them, building planets and claiming entire galaxies was simply what humans did. By the end of the second year, humanity had established thriving settlements throughout the void and had begun expanding into the Andromeda Galaxy itself. The first human-built planets were taking shape, designed from the ground up to support human life and values. Ambassador Elena Vasquez received a priority transmission in her office aboard New Geneva Station. The message came from an unexpected source, a group of rebel species in the Milky Way who had formed an alliance against the Dominion. "Ambassador Vasquez," the message began, spoken by a Zephyrian diplomat. "This is Free Admiral Zixana of the Liberated Alliance. We represent 47 species who have declared independence from Dominion rule. We formally request your assistance in our struggle for freedom." Elena stared at the message display. When humanity had fled the Milky Way, they had hoped only to save themselves. Now they were being asked to return as liberators. She drafted her reply carefully. "Free Admiral Zixana, humanity remembers our former neighbors with friendship. We have much to share with those who choose freedom over servitude. Expect our diplomatic mission within the month." The next morning, Elena stood in the main assembly hall of New Geneva Station as President Chen announced humanity's decision to the gathered population. The hall held 10,000 people, with millions more watching via broadcast throughout human space. "Citizens," President Chen began, "1 year ago we left our home galaxy to preserve our freedom. Today we have the opportunity to extend that same freedom to others. The Dominion that sought to enslave us is crumbling. Species across the Milky Way are reaching out to us for help in their own struggles for liberty." A cheer went up from the assembled crowd. Elena looked around at the faces. many of them belonging to children who had been born free in the void, who would now help liberate the galaxy their parents had fled. "We will return to the Milky Way," President Chen continued, "not as refugees seeking shelter, but as liberators offering hope. We will share our technology, our knowledge, and our commitment to freedom with all who desire it." Elena thought back to that day 2 years ago when she had stood before the Dominion Council, a single human facing the representatives of galactic tyranny. Now humanity commanded technology that made them equals to any power in the universe. The final scene of humanity's transformation played out on the bridge of the flagship New Earth as Admiral Torres prepared to lead the first liberation fleet back to the Milky Way. The ship itself was a marvel of human and First Alliance technology, larger than any vessel the Dominion had ever built, powered by artificial star cores and equipped with weapons that could shatter planets. "Fleet status report," Admiral Torres ordered. "All vessels ready for intergalactic jump," his navigation officer reported. 1,000 ships prepared for departure. Torres looked at the tactical display showing the positions of humanity's liberation fleet. Each ship carried not weapons of conquest, but tools of freedom. Terraforming equipment, defensive systems, and most importantly, the knowledge of how to build independent civilizations. "Signal all vessels," Torres commanded. "This is Admiral Torres. 2 years ago, we fled the Milky Way as refugees. Today, we return as liberators. We go to free not just the galaxy, but every species within it. Our exodus ends today. Our future begins now." The liberation fleet vanished in a flash of light, carrying humanity's gift of freedom back to the stars that had given them birth. Behind them, in the void between galaxies, children who had never known the fear of oppression continued to play in gardens built among the ruins of the First Alliance. Their laughter echoed through structures that had waited millions of years for life to return. Humanity had found their new horizon. Now they would share it with the galaxy,